Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to BWTM Sports, the day after Boxing Day. Yes, I have with me a returning guest, say a friend, boxing family member, Gayle Falkenthal, all the way from the States. Gayle, how are you?
Wonderful to be here, although I'm a bit daunted seeing the intro that says you inspire and educate. Oh, that's a tall order, but we'll do our best.
Absolutely, we're going to try. We'll try our best. I'm going to be looking at your door today, asking some questions to find out what has been going on in the world of boxing from your end, the world of boxing from my end, reviewing the year, and of course, the special relationship between the UK and the US.
Personified right here on this
Right.
show.
Yes, the special relationship. We send our fighters over, you beat them up.
Occasionally they come here and they beat us up. So, you know.
Yeah, it happens as well. We go and beat you up as well. Yeah. Yeah. So seriously now, how have you been?
Very good. I'm safe in my bunker in Southern California, holding off the COVID horde and hoping for brighter days ahead.
Yeah, COVID is that thing, isn't it? COVID has been the whole year, 9 months of COVID, and we're going into 20. We've just gone into lockdown here in the UK, where I am now, tier 4, so more lockdown, but much to talk about. You know, thinking about it, there's more to talk about in this year of boxing, and there's been less boxing than there has been a whole year the year before, because so many more things have been going on, and you'd think there'd be less things to talk about because of COVID, but there's been more to talk about.
Regardless of what happens in the ring, things become a catalyst and bounce off the walls. And surprisingly, we did have some excellent fights that moved the needle in certain divisions this year. So, and navigating, this whole crazy road we've been on, some have done better than others, but thank God, no matter what happened, we still at least have events to talk about. We did get in boxing this year.
So we're going to start. Shall we be talking about Canelo and Callum Smith, that fight? Can we start there?
Let's start there, because that did end the year with a bang in more ways than one. From the absolutely insane, incredible walkout to the final countdown, blending into Mexico, Querido y Lindo. It was a phenomenal event. What a great way to end the year, showing it could be done. Canelo got through his legal issues seemingly in a flash and got himself in the ring. It wasn't quite the fight I think we all hoped for, because it was so one-sided. And even Canelo's fans might have hoped for something more competitive. And I'm not sure what happened.
I think, first of all, little and large, when you see someone who's much taller and looks physically bigger, and it's like, oh yeah, he's bigger, he's taller, he's longer, he's going to give Canelo a fight. But there are other things that maybe weren't taken into consideration. The level of opposition that Canelo's been facing compared to Callum Smith. The activity of Canelo versus Callum Smith. They're saying that Callum Smith was the #1 super middleweight in the world, but there are Benavidez and a few others that may argue that, you know what, maybe he's not the best super middleweight in the world, just the best available at the time. That's what maybe the promotion should have said, rather than he's the best super middleweight in the world. His promoter was saying stuff like, you haven't even lost a round, have you, Callum? And we're like, in the UK going, no, you got beat by John Ryder pretty well, and that kickboxing did problems as well.
He did, so, and that had to have messed with his head a little bit, because sure, he walked out of the ring with the victory, but he knew what really happened deep in his head and heart, and he has to explain that to himself. And perhaps he really hadn't found the explanation and gotten the confidence back before he stepped in the ring with Canelo.
Might have been a technical thing, because in the preview I said, well, Callum Smith will do, as soon as he gets back to the ropes, will just tuck up like this and just go into a ball. And that's exactly what we saw.
It is.
And against elite opposition, that's not the answer. You've got to either tie up or, turn off the ropes or fight off the ropes, do something. But just to curl up in a ball and let a guy just whack you with body shots, and you've got all that reach and that height. That being said, also, Smith turned up in the country a week before the fight or a week of the fight. Plus, I heard he had 4 to 6 weeks to prepare. I mean, he didn't have that much time to prepare. I mean, I'm not saying the fight would have gone any differently, but certainly those things help Canelo.
Well, and Canelo is a training beast. His compound is here where I am in San Diego. He's notorious for never taking any significant time off. He is ready. He loves to train. He's got now quite a few elite stablemates there, with him as the figurehead they all look up to. The Reynosos are doing a phenomenal job with the likes of Ryan Garcia, Oscar Valdez, Frank Sanchez are all in that gym. And it's a good environment. It's a healthy environment. He has very few distractions here. And the truth is, in Southern California, other than people like me, complete boxing fanatics, there are a lot of places he can walk around here completely unbothered and live an amazingly normal life. If he was in Mexico, if he was at home in Guadalajara, that would not happen. So he really does spend a lot of time here. And I think it's very difficult to be in Callum Smith's position and get offered a fight like this, with life-changing money, and say, well, I guess I can't take it because I don't have enough time to get ready. You're going to take the fight. You're going to take the fight. And it did put him at a disadvantage as well. So he needed to be busier. He needed to fight taller. He needed to go out in a blaze of glory. If he was going to go out like Amir Khan. Man, credit to Khan. Let's remember, he absolutely came forward. He was busy. He won early rounds. He got caught. But I would argue it's far better to go out like that. And honestly, it's long-term far less damaging to you physically than to get a pounding for 12 rounds. Because once Khan was up and cleared his head, he was basically fine. Whatever is going on with Callum Smith's arm, his tricep, his biceps, whatever is damaged there, those soft tissue injuries take a long, long time to come back from.
The next subject, it's probably a cantankerous subject, one that people probably don't want to talk about, is the actual the size of Canelo and how he's able to move through the weights. We had the tainted beef situation and the 6 months out. Then he gets into a super fight, and then now he's fighting again from light heavyweight down to super middleweight, and how he's still very effective at those weights. And the question mark of potential PEDs over the career of Canelo. Some would say, well, that's just hating because he's very successful. But questions will be asked.
Questions will always be asked, especially when they are caught. Nobody was buying the tainted meat in Mexico. I mean, please. This man could hire a private chef every day of his life. It wouldn't be an issue. I'm not so troubled with the weight moves. He started at 154. He moved up to 160. He stayed at middleweight at 160 for quite some time. He's just turned 30 years old. It's a fairly natural progression to go from.
Your dog doesn't agree with you.
My boxer dogs, I might add. And that one in particular, who just sounded off, had quite a conversation with Kell Brook a few weeks ago, which was quite funny. Yeah, that's another story. He's moved from 154 to 160 to 168 now that he's hit 30. He had to bulk up a little from 1 to 175, but that was an anomaly. He dropped right back down to 168 at this age after this many fights, training as hard as he does, I am not troubled in and of itself by the weight, by moving from 154 to 160 to 168 over the course of more than a dozen years. And he's been boxing now for 15 years.
Yes.
15 years. So to see Canelo, you may see the height and think, well, that seems like a lot for 5'8", 5'9". No, he's a very thick, girdled person from, if you think of front to back as well as side to side. He is quite a barrel. He carries it well. It hasn't affected his speed. If you're really packing it on, you see fighters who pack on weight, especially chemically aided, they slow down. They may gain power, but they have a harder time carrying it around. Canelo, you don't see any of that.
I would question you about the speed thing, because who has he fought who trouble in the speed? I mean, he will never fight. He has any intention who can move like Mayweather. He got embarrassed by Mayweather, thought, you know what? Everyone I'm going to fight with now has got you flat-footed and moving straight lines. So Canelo's got that advantage there.
Yes. Well, that was a brilliant thing for Canelo to do, to take that fight. He was 23 years old, to test himself. Where do I stand now at this stage of my career? Far more than a prospect, not quite obviously at the level he is today. He learned so many valuable lessons that he applies today from that one fight. He should pay Floyd a residual check from every purse he gets as a thank you for what he learned. And if you watched the fight with Smith and noted how good Canelo's defensive skills have become, and that is part of his speed, his head movement, his torso movement at the waist, the ability to slip the punch, to see the punch coming and simply move out of the way and then move back in. There are very fighters at that level. We started seeing it with Jacobs, and we really saw it on display against Smith.
Again, I'm not thinking a very high skill set. However, since the Mayweather fight, how many highly skilled opponents has Canelo fought? How many guys has Canelo fought you've gone, yeah, he's got the skill set to beat Canelo? Gennady Golovkin, everyone talks about, he's flat-footed and he's slow. He's not fast, he's slow. He gets hit a lot, and his career, Gennady Golovkin, when they talk about him being a power puncher, for example, if you look at the guys he's knocked out at elite level, you've really got to go searching. It's not there. So which guy has had the skill set and been willing to beat Canelo? The last guy he fought like that was Floyd Mayweather. Since then, there's been nobody he's fought since the Floyd Mayweather fight that's had the skill set and the ability to beat Canelo. And this has been one of Canelo's people have put to Canelo. Look, you've got guys like you've got Charlo out there to fight you. You've got Benavidez out there that want to fight you. There's other guys out there that you can fight. Now I'm hearing about Wildring as his next opponent. Really? And that's acceptable.
I have not a lot of issues. Let's go backwards in this discussion. Golovkin did almost beat Canelo. Many of us, ringside particularly, thought he won in the first fight. There's very little disagreement that draw was a win for Golovkin. So there has, in fact, been another fighter that beat Canelo. He simply didn't get the scorecards. There are also a lot of the same people who saw the second fight as a draw. I didn't, but it was very close. Razor thin. Now we've got Canelo moving forward. He has snuck in the Smith fight for this year.
Sorry. Let's not forget the Lara fight. Let's forget all that. The Lara fight. What about that fight?
That was a Styles make fight situation. Lara, anybody who is smart enough, like Floyd, like Lara, even like Austin Trout, to box Canelo, to not fight Canelo's fight. There are two things that happen in fights with people of these skill sets that differ. Whose plan is going to be imposed upon the other? And Lara imposed his version of the fight on Canelo. Austin Trout did, not quite as successfully. And yes, Lara came very close to getting that upset as well. So let's look forward now.
Okay.
Canelo, at this level, these guys fight twice a year. If this Ildirim fight is a bonus fight, he is reportedly going to hold it in Guadalajara, in his hometown.
I can't believe you used the word bonus fight, like as if we're getting some benefit from when watching fighting Wildrum, who lost his last fight. I mean, who was seeing fight Wildrum?
You know what? This fight isn't for us. It isn't for you. It isn't for me. This is this is for his fans in Mexico, to give them a chance to see him. And
let him do it in the gym. Let him do it in the gym. Let him fight that fight in the gym, and let's have a proper fight.
What does that help his fans in Mexico? This is a gift to his fans. Now, if this is a bonus third fight for the year, and we still get a fight in theory in May, in theory in September, and he is a motion machine. He may feel he needs this fight because he only had one fight last year and he wants to stay busy. He packages this as a gift to the Mexican fans, fights in hometown. This is like, the homecoming parade for him. And I have
you think like he's retired or he's retiring.
I have no problem with this. None. Here's another issue.
You must work for Canelo's PR team, definitely. Either that or you want to join for Canelo's PR team, because Wildrum is garbage. Chris Eubank Jr. knocked Wildrum out. Chris Eubank Jr. knocked Wildrum out.
Right.
See that?
You're completely misunderstanding the point of the fight.
Oh yeah, I get he's doing the homecoming, his fans, and something for the fans. It's great.
This is a mandatory. This is also, Canelo has had a lot of issues with the sanctioning organizations, and particularly the WBC, which is located in Mexico. This is also, in my opinion, an olive branch to them in many ways to make nice. Now, moving forward, let's look back at the criticism about his opponents. Well, a lot of that has been promotional fences in North America. Those do not exist anymore. He is a free agent. So I agree, this year will truly test. Where is he going? Will he fight Billy Joe Saunders? I hope so. Will he fight someone the likes of Caleb Plant or David Benavidez? I hope so. Benavidez keeps shooting himself in the foot with his misbehavior, but that's a fight that's very intriguing to me. But I think that would be the third one down the road. I'd love to see a Charlo fight.
Come on, you know that's a fight.
Oh, that's a hell of a fight. I do think, though, that's the cherry on top of the cake down the road. I don't think that happens this year. I think it happens next year. Both these guys have many more prime years of fighting, 2, 3, 4, 5 more years at least. And I'm not troubled if we don't get that fight for another year or so, especially to let this pandemic era get behind us. I still think we're going to have very limited access for fans, probably at least through the summer. And if it rolls even a little later, that means a September fight might be under restrictions. So don't give me a Charlo fight until all that's done. I'm fine with seeing Saunders. I'm fine with seeing a Plant or a Benavidez, or hey, Caleb Plant is going to fight Caleb Truax. There's always that small possibility the underdog Truax wins. So what do we have then? I do think Saunders is at this point the most interesting test to see which version of Saunders shows up, and to see if he can back up his talk. It's a lot of fun to have with that.
It's a good fight. Saunders didn't break against. Didn't look great in the fight he had in America defending his WBO title. So I guess Canelo would think, he's looked at Callum Smith and go, I'll have Saunders next. That I can see the thinking.
And I think he was treated very well by Eddie Hearn. He enjoyed being part of a Matchroom promotion. Rolled out the red carpet for him. And while I don't think he'll sign anything long term, I wouldn't be surprised to for us to find out that he decides, I'll go for a 2-fight deal taking me through the rest of this year with Hearn and Matchroom and see where it goes from there. But he seemed delighted by the way the fight transpired, all of the promotion, all of the trappings around it, that crazy walkout. He seemed very happy, very lighthearted in a way that he hasn't for quite a while. He's been very tense, dealing with whatever was going on between him and Golden Boy and Oscar De La Hoya. And so now we've got a Canelo that we've seen flashes of. He seems to have relaxed a little bit, and that's good for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, him being the guy, almost a flagship fighter for boxing, he needs to be in those big fights. He does.
Yeah, and clearly outside the heavyweight division, the biggest name in boxing.
So moving on. Spence. They've been talking a lot about Spence and Canelo. I remember talking to Derek James way back, just before the Charlos were making their defense of in that double bill, a double header main event on PBC. And he said that the possibility of Spence and Charlo was very realistic. What are your thoughts about that?
Spence and Charlo or Spence and Canelo, I think.
Spence and Canelo, sorry.
Not immediately, not anytime soon. I think once Spence runs out of worthy opponents, maybe that's a possibility. I also think that throwing his name out was a little bit of trolling. I think that was dangling some attractive bait in the water in front of Terrence Crawford to say, listen, you don't want to play ball with me. You're making too many demands. Fine. I'll fight somebody like Canelo. I don't need you. I think a lot of that was intended to rile up Bud Crawford. I'm not sure it worked or not.
What's your thought of the whole Bud Crawford Spence thing? For me, it just seems to be ticket sales. Look, Spence be doing good business. Crawford's doing crap business in terms of ticket sales. Spence sells out. Crawford doesn't. And his promoter, soon to be gone, we hope, Bob Arum, says that he something about investment in isn't it his job to promote and to invest in his fighter? He's moaning about investing in Crawford.
He's moaning about investing without a return on investment. It's a business. Business people don't spend money on things if they're not going to get a return.
Yeah, but if you spend your time promoting Lomachenko and call Lomachenko the best fighter in the world and the greatest thing since sliced bread, and you've got a guy who's been undisputed champion, moved up in weight, he's got the WBO champion, and he's arguably if not the pound-for-pound fighter in the world, the second best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, and you're not pushing that agenda. I mean, you shoot yourself in the foot. I mean, he's got the opportunity to had the opportunity to promote Bud Crawford in a certain way. But I mean, when you fight the likes of, no disrespect, Kell Brook, the Green Machine, and
in Crawford's defense, when he fights at home in the United States Midwest, when he fights in Nebraska and Omaha, he sells out a 15,000 seat arena, which for boxing in the United States is an accomplishment. His bigger issue isn't tickets in the seats, it's pay-per-view numbers. He's still not a household name. Part of the problem is that Crawford is not very media friendly. He is not always very fan friendly.
His performances have been quite good. In fact, they've been excellent.
So I mean outside the ring. He's notoriously prickly. He doesn't like to do interviews. I will say in his defense, I've interviewed him and I've just encountered him outside the ring in Las Vegas when he is not one of the fighters. He's simply an attendee, and know some of his stablemates well.
Yeah.
He can be an absolutely delightful personality.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
A very polite man to meet him. It's funny. Somebody as well known as he is in the boxing world, he'll still introduce himself to you by name. It's like, yeah, we know who you are, bud. And I'm not sure why he comes off as so defensive and so grumpy sometimes when he's on camera. I think that was the seed of whatever has gone bad between Arum and Bud Crawford, because Arum does expect his fighters to carry the PR heavy lifting. You know, it's very important that these things are promoted right. They lean in, their team leans in. You know, Bud, not too keen on all of that. He believes his performance in the ring should alone sell a fight, and you know that's just not how it's just not how it works. It's just not how it works. So whatever's gone on between them doesn't look like it's fixable, and so he needs to get out of there, and then we'll see. Then we'll see what happens. Again, the emotional issues, you know, could be overcome, but it's an easier route to this fight to just wait until Crawford's out of that house.
The way to solve the problem, he fights Sean Porter. He goes to PBC, he fights Sean Porter, he stops Sean Porter, and then a Spence Crawford fight sounds viable. And PBC will push that so much.
I agree with you 150%. And I do think that will happen. I do.
Crawford at PBC, I believe, is where Crawford's career changes. I don't know if it's for the better. But it changes because the level of opposition will be that much better. You know, he now has the likes to fight Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, Sean Porter. I mean, if he could go and even get 2 fights, Danny Garcia and Sean Porter, or Sean Porter and Keith Thurman, if you could beat those 2 guys, then he's right in line for a Spence fight.
I absolutely agree. I'd much rather see him fight Thurman than Garcia. I think it'd be a more entertaining fight. And Thurman needs a good fight. Thurman needs a good opponent. He needs to rehabilitate himself. And I'm not sure how interested he is. You know, he has a pretty good life outside of boxing and a lot of other interests. He's a smart man.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the fire is still there with Keith.
No. I call him Keith Payday Thurman now. That's what it's about with Keith.
Well, Keith has gone from one time to sometime to once in a while to no time at all, right? I mean, the puns write themselves, right? With Keith, and I
don't think that Pacquiao fight did him any favors. Yeah. He didn't, did he? All the promoting beforehand. All that didn't help him, did it?
You know, as skilled as, you know, as one of a kind as Manny is, at 40, he should not have been able to do that to Keith Thurman. And he did.
But Thurman's not been, I mentioned it, I said it to Keith as well. He's not been the same fighter since he fought Julio Diaz. That shoulder, I think it's gone. I think it's gone.
When you have those nagging injuries, and then it's other little things, you know, a finger and it breaks his hand, and it's not good. Not good. When you're not horribly motivated, these are the kind of things that can easily give you that reason to just get out.
Manny Pacquiao, Errol Spence. Come on.
I don't love it. I do not love it. I don't love it.
I don't love it.
Really, do we want to see Manny go out that way? I for one do not.
Wait, you've already doomed Pacquiao already. You've doomed the poor man.
I know I have. Isn't that awful?
You doom the man like that.
Well, look, you know.
No, you can't do that. You can't doom him like that.
he's going to be fighting a bigger, younger, stronger guy. Now,
Wasn't the same with Keith
Pacquiao is wily. He's smart in the ring. He finds ways to win. He does. But, oh, my Lord, I don't want to see him face down like he was after Juan Manuel Marquez hit him. I mean,
that was quite
I'm not sure Manny at this stage of his career. I mean, does he really need that fight? I don't think he does.
He said he saw something, but he might have seen the same thing Mikey Garcia saw, which was money.
Well, of course. And at this point, Senator Pacquiao is a one-man social services agency in the Philippines. He is using that money to build schools, to build hospitals, and I imagine in the pandemic, the need is greater than ever. It's not going to be too much longer, another year and a fraction, before he will be old enough and the time will come where he can run for president of the Philippines. This is a foregone conclusion. We are going to have President Pacquiao. So let's enjoy him while it lasts. But, with that ahead in your future, really, you want to get in the ring with Errol Spence before you become president of your country?
I would rather see Pacquiao fight Crawford than Spence.
I would too. I do. I think even if he lost, the potential for true harm is a bit less.
Ask Danny Garcia. That fight, listen, I was expecting absolute disaster when Spence came back to fight Garcia. I thought, this guy's come back from a car accident, this and that. And I'm like, is he really good? And he comes out and he looks absolutely spot on. And I've never seen Danny Garcia go back to a corner and look so discouraged. I mean, so discouraged. I mean, he looked for the first time in his career that he could have potentially got stopped. Thurman never did that. Porter never did that. But Spence's performance was impressive.
Yeah. There are so many ways that could have gone. Spence could have felt physically nervous. Was he healed? My concern was, he had dental implants put in for his.
Didn't we?
That really disturbed me, but that didn't seem to psychologically bother him. Thinking about what physically might be different. And then there was the whole mental aspect of it. I think what we saw is a man who said, I cheated death, and now he's fearless. He's fearless because of this. He got thrown from a car, a Ferrari. He should, if alive, even if he lived, he should be in such bad shape he would never have come back to the sport. But that he's come back reinvigorated. Truly, I think now he believes nothing can touch him. I see that mindset. How really dangerous is that? Oh my God. He was already physically talented. Now I think he is as mentally tough as it comes.
Wow. I mean, I was watching round after round. I mean, Garcia had his moments, but for some reason he wouldn't let his hands go. I know obviously the body work of Spence had a lot to do with it and the punch he was getting back, but he just couldn't let his hands go. And then in the last round, he flurries. I'm like, bro, well, why didn't you do that like 5 or 6 rounds ago? But then somebody said, well, if he'd done that 5 or 6 rounds ago, he probably got stopped.
I think also what we can't see from our perspective is the look in the man's eyes across from you coming at you. And I think they were blazing. And Garcia said, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? Because he, like everybody else, wondered what version of Errol Spence are we going to see? And he thought up close and thought, oh my God, what was I thinking?
This wasn't a good move.
His normally bombastic father trainer in the corner, even he had very little to say. And that's a first.
Yeah, and he looked very impressive. Very, very impressive. His stablemate, Errol Spencer's stablemate, Jamel Charlo, the knockout win he had over Rosario. That was pretty impressive. I've never seen a guy get knocked out like that and then on the floor. The only time I remember that was Sergey Likovic when Wilder knocked him out. That same sort of
yes. Well, on the floor, like, I imagine you would agree with me. Hands down, Derek James is Trainer of the Year.
Well, I said that, but now they're saying that what's the boy's name? Teofimo Lopez's father is the Trainer of the Year, and I don't know why, but
I understand that because I would choose Lopez as the Fighter of the Year. So it frequently follows on, but in this case, Lopez Sr. doesn't have another stable of fighters. He isn't a proven commodity that whatever techniques he uses with his sons would translate to anyone else. And, you know, really how much the son is being trained by the father at this point. Elite level fighters, you know, sometimes they're very much training themselves. And we'll see as things move on. I detect the tiniest little crack between the two of them. If you hear them being interviewed, you know, the son is starting to sound a lot more mature than his father. And I'm not sure how much longer he's going to tolerate him butting in and trying to get in front of the camera and making this about himself, which he absolutely does.
Yes. We had that with Robert Guerrero and his father. His father was a character.
Well, you've got Angel Garcia, you've got Ruben Guerrero, you've got Teofimo Sr. Holy cow. I have to say, I have a grudging like for Ruben. I've crossed paths with him several times. He's not quite as crazy in the head as the other two. He's certainly a forceful advocate for his son, but in a little bit of a different way. But if you encounter him out in Southern California, and he does train other fighters, young guys, he's a kind of a strong, silent type personality outside dealing with his son. And to his credit, I think he took Robert absolutely as far as he could on the skills his son had. So kudos to him.
Did well with him as well, didn't he? Did well with him.
Yes.
How many world-class trainers do you know today that have got 2 unified champions in their stable?
Well, gosh, you're giving me the trivia test of all time, right?
I don't know many, but Derek James has got 2.
Yeah.
So he should be Trainer of the Year. But I understand he's not going to get it.
You know, almost from Spence alone, from bringing him back, I would do it.
Yeah, but, exactly. That alone, comeback of the year.
Yeah. Well, I would say Spence is a strong candidate for comeback of the year, and I wouldn't argue him as the choice.
I know who you're going to say. I know who you're going to say.
Say it for me. Come on.
The Gypsy King.
No. Roman Gonzalez.
Okay.
Gonzalez working his way back from absolute disaster against Sor Rungvisai to looking toward a long-awaited March date in the ring for a rematch with Ron Francisco Estrada. Oh, wow. I can't wait for that fight. That's one on the calendar for 2021 I'm most looking forward to. I think Gonzalez has a very tall order going up against Estrada, but we're going to get to see it. I'm thrilled to death.
Wow.
Tyson Fury, what did he come back from? No.
Yeah, we'll talk about Fury and the heavyweight division in a moment. Let's put them to one side. Trainers. I don't know how much you know about Anthony Yard in the States. Have you heard of Anthony Yard?
Of course we know.
And his recent fight, the story is, we don't know how true this is, but it was rumored in his loss against Lyndon Arthur, he went back to the corner and he said, I can't get past the jab. And somebody shouted out, lions in the camp. So now, after that loss, he's had the loss to Kovalev. He's now had a loss to Lyndon Arthur, who I think is a very good fighter, mind you. There's questions, and people, he says that it's all about change. What are your thoughts about Anthony Yard and where he fits in the whole picture now?
You know, when fighters lose, especially those first losses, and they've gotten to a high level without being challenged and then lose. They've got to rationalize it somehow. And very few are willing to turn the mirror on themselves and say, you know, I didn't, these were my shortcomings and here's what I need to do to fix them. This is what I didn't do correctly. This is where I made a mistake. No, they've got to find something to blame it on. The training situation, the trainer is always who gets thrown under the bus. Andy Ruiz loses to Joshua. What does he do? He fires Manny Robles immediately. This is what happens. You know, these guys get rid of their trainers and move on. And if that is what in their mind allows them to move forward, you know, I don't love it, but it's a sad, familiar story with no thanks to the person who got them that far. I don't always think it's a bad idea. I wish the splits were a little more generous and a little more kind sometimes. But sometimes they do need someone with a new approach and a few new wrinkles and someone to improve what they're doing with a fresh look. That's certainly true.
There was a rumor that was going around at one point that Chris Eubank Jr. was going to fight Caleb Plant.
It's not a bad fight, but I think Plant is very much a North American figure, and I'm not sure a fight with somebody outside this sphere of influence attracts enough attention, which is, I think, why we've got a fight with Plant and the other club, Truex, right, who are both from the northern part of the United States. There's a little bit of territory battle there. It's a good matchup. It's a good matchup. And it was also something that could be made internally to PBC. So it's very easy to do.
Okay, let's talk a little bit. I talk about PBC, Top Rank, Matchroom. How's the year been for those three, would you say?
Well, a year that they never expected to have to completely reinvent what they were doing. Top Rank was the first one out of the gate, decided, they're based in Las Vegas. They deal with a lot of fighters in the immediate region, in the Las Vegas area, Southern California. I mean, you can put on card after card after card with fighters just from those areas in northern Mexico, all driving distance. And with the cooperation of their partners at the MGM properties, essentially took over their conference center, their big convention center behind the main hotel, and took it over for the rest of the year from about May on. Very smart thing to do. They just wanted to get back in action. They didn't worry at first about the level of fights. They did the best they could with the guys they had. And we had some unlikely star emerge. Clay Collard, anybody? Clay Collard. Come on, give me a break. Who thought he was going to be someone we would be talking about at the end of the year? And credit to Top Rank, because they had to figure out the protocols first. They had to go through this gauntlet first without knowing, was it going to work? Was it safe? Were we going to lose our shirts over this? But credit to them, they did. And it wasn't much longer before Matchroom did the same thing. Frank Warren did the same thing. Showtime, and PBC got on board, finally figured out ways to get these things done. And, gratefully, just a matter of 8 or 10 weeks after all sports were shut down, boxing came back. One of the first sports to return. Mm-hmm. And without fans, there were some interesting wrinkles figured out. For example, Top Rank, to keep the number of people down, decided they would have 2 full-time cutmen, one assigned to the red corner for a card, one assigned to the blue corner. That meant the fighters didn't bring their own people, so that eliminated, 12, 18 more people that didn't need to be tested. limited the number of people in the corner, and in many cases would try to schedule a trainer with multiple fighters on the card. Again, you cut the number of people down, because testing all these people repeatedly is, no small expense. On the small cards, Top Rank was conducting over the summer in the United States in Las Vegas. Testing alone for every card was about $25,000.
Wow.
That's a lot of money. And without fans, but they were looking long term. They wanted to keep the sport in front of fans at a time where there wasn't a lot else to watch. It was absolutely the smartest thing they could have done, because down the road, people are thinking, hey, I saw so-and-so over the summer. I'm interested in seeing him again. And that all led up to the brilliant decision, in the United States at least, to put the Lomachenko and Lopez fight on free, normal cable broadcast TV in the United States. No subscription, no pay-per-view. Because now, when Lopez comes back in front of the public in the United States, people will pay to see him. They know him. They like him. They're on board. Everybody's bought in now. That was a smart investment. That's going to pay off for them for years to come.
Lopez Lomachenko. It's amazing how one day Lomachenko was the greatest fighter that was on the planet. He could walk on water. He was this and that. He gets beat by Lopez, and you just forgotten. What happened?
What a shame. I think, there were, I don't think it was any one factor, frankly. I think it was a cascade of little things here and there. I think the age and the wear and tear and the layoff may have had an impact. I think it was a weight division he shouldn't ever have been in. Lomachenko's very small. If he was to move back down, I think we'd see a very different performance. And for whatever reason, something got into his head that Lopez was too dangerous to approach. I don't know what made him fearful, but fights are all lost in mind.
Those knockouts, Gayle, those knockouts that Lopez was pulling off with either hand, that would make you a bit cautious.
He walked into a fight with somebody who was thought of at the time as an equally dangerous puncher, Nicholas Walters, and he humiliated him.
Listen, Walters was paid off. Have you seen Walters since? Have you seen Nicholas Walters since? That boy was paid off. He's probably somewhere in Jamaica on a beach now. Have you seen Walters fight since? He got paid off.
That was a absolute humiliation.
Yeah, he got paid off.
Yeah, well,
I don't. That's what I see. I don't even talk about that. I don't even talk about him. I try not to talk about him. Nicholas Walters, and the other guy I don't like to talk about is Danny Jacobs. He's another one I like talking about. Jacobs, we call him on the channel, and I don't talk about him either.
Okay, well, I think Lomachenko needs to drop down one, maybe even two divisions if he can still do it. There's still a lot for him to do there. I think he'll perform much better. I just think this fight overall was just a mistake. Just really a mistake. Right. Everybody's got their nemesis out there, their kryptonite. Right. That one person that's troublesome.
Hold on, Gayle. Lomachenko, before that fight, he was the greatest thing that sliced bread. He was the best fighter ever. Suddenly, the weight's a problem. Or is it just the guy that he thought was fresher, younger, had ambition, and wanted to kick his butt and was his first real test?
As I said, I don't think it was any one item that spelled disaster for Lomachenko. It was many things all built in together.
Okay, I didn't listen to the commentators tell me he was the greatest thing. There were so many other fighters that are around today that have accomplished more than him that don't get the credit, and Lomachenko is getting all the credit. And for me, that was the thing that was burning me inside.
Right.
Good quality fighter, don't get me wrong, quality fighter, and you give him credit where it's due. But this over the top selling of him, I found it almost nauseating at times.
I have to admit, people got very wound up in the legend and the myth. And that doesn't serve the fighter well either.
No, it doesn't.
Told like that. Absolutely doesn't. It was always going to be a closer fight. And the danger is when the fighter starts believing the hype themselves. They can't let that happen. Truly a shame. But I do think he'll resurrect his career, get a couple of good fights in, but he's fought a lot of rounds. He's in his early 30s. He doesn't fight on too much longer. Hopefully he invested his money well, and I'm sure thanks to the good advice of his manager Igis Klimas, he'll be fine.
The comments that he's making are not being seen in a good light either.
Right. And that to me is the most disturbing thing of all. Again, the fighter who loses, who has to figure out what to blame, and they're not going to blame themselves. So some of them, get rid of their trainer. Well, his trainer's his father. So that makes it a little tougher for him. So now it's these crazy whining excuses. No. I don't want to hear that out of any fighter. Thankfully, he hasn't quite risen to the level of Deontay Wilder delusion.
We'll get to him in a minute.
But no, you know what? If you want to speak like that in the privacy of your home with your family and your intimate friends, fine. Don't do that stuff in public. It does not serve you well. I don't even care if there's a grain of truth to it. It still doesn't serve you well. Shut up and move on. Okay,
let's talk. Let's go straight into the heavyweight division with the big boys. Okay, there is so much to talk about. I think we'll start with Dillian Whyte, shall we?
Oh, my Lord. Man. Come on. No matter what you think of him in the ring, don't you feel bad for him? Really? He's been screwed over.
You pay to get lawyers, solicitors and lawyers to get you that number one, to get you that mandatory.
Right.
You get the mandatory, and then what ends up happening? You get knocked out.
And by a man, 41 years old, 30 pounds lighter than you are. It was the year of the uppercut, Ingram. Think about it. Think about how many fights have ended on absolutely delicious uppercuts. When have we had a year like this, in recent memory, where we had memorable uppercut knockouts? Gervonta Davis, Alexander Povetkin. Who else am I thinking of? Canelo landed some wicked uppercuts onto Callum Smith. I mean, that punch has got all new life. I love it.
What did Americans think of Dillian Whyte before the knockout defeat and after the knockout defeat, and now subsequently talking about potentially moving Povetkin out of the way and going after Luis Ortiz?
Whyte is not a major figure in the heavyweight division in the United States. I don't think his backstory is very well known, and his reformation, if you will. I think that's a shame because it is a fascinating story. But there are so many other aspiring heavyweights that Americans don't know a lot about him. They probably think of Luis Ortiz as the A side, frankly, which is ridiculous. But I don't think that's a bad fight, actually.
Who are you leaning towards in that fight?
Well, Ortiz, who has one of those Cuban birth certificates. I mean, we don't really know how old he is.
He's around 49, I think.
Yeah, well, there might be a 5 in front of it. It's a shame. It's a shame because if he was honest about how old he is and he gets in the ring, maybe break Bernard Hopkins' record, but he can't admit to it. So
if he became heavyweight champion, or potentially he could be the oldest heavyweight champion in history.
Wouldn't that be amazing? It really would. I'm not sure how much gas he has left in the tank. I think he's got to have the right guy in front of him. But I don't hate this fight. I don't mind it. I don't hate it.
Boxing fans keep talking about this fight all the time. They didn't want to avoid Luis Ortiz. Now the fight will happen. What they'll say is, well, Deontay Wilder knocked him out twice, so this is what fight fans will say afterwards.
Of course they will. Of course they will. That's all right. I think it will be entertaining for however long it might last. Let's see what they've both got left. It's a good litmus test to see, do any of them deserve any major opportunities moving forward. This is their audition for this last stretch of their careers.
Would you really want to get a rematch and do things right with Povetkin? I mean, like their camp was saying they were doing everything right until they got caught with that one punch. If that's the case, wait, get the rematch and do the business. Why would you want to go to Luis Ortiz and maybe suffer another knockout defeat to Luis Ortiz? That's dangerous.
Well, it is dangerous. However, we don't know how much White's confidence was shaken by that outcome. And sometimes you've got to have that fight in between to steel yourself psychologically and prove to yourself deep down, okay, I'm ready to do this. I'm all right to do this. And if he doesn't fear Ortiz in the same way he now fears Povetkin, there's a rationale behind it. Would I rather see the rematch first? Oh, hell yes, I would. Of course I would. But wouldn't we all? But if this is what he's got to run through to do it, fine. And, there's also the thinking that the clock's ticking on Povetkin, on his age. And, every month, every few months, could make a difference. But I'll tell you what, he looked so good in the lead up to that fight. And in interviews, I asked him, about imagining at the beginning, back to when he was a young pup at the beginning of his career, could he have imagined himself at 41 years old being in this position? And he said, he said he could. He felt great. It looks like he's training right. He did look good. He looked fit, and he just looked ready. So while it was certainly an upset, I'm not sure it was as much of a surprise as we thought at the time.
I thought that Povetkin was going to beat him. I really did. I thought it was an upset. The minute I saw the fight, I thought, this is a dangerous fight. White's been knocked down repeatedly as he's moved up in the higher levels of boxing. He's got knocked down by an uppercut in a fight against Rivas. Got hit with the overhand right by Parker. Almost out on his feet there. I thought, well, if Povetkin hits him, it's curtains. And we saw what happened.
Boy, did he ever a perfectly placed punch. And truly, to knock him out with that kind of force, with a 30-pound weight disadvantage, very impressive.
And his ex-trainer, Stacey McKinley, says that Povetkin isn't really a big puncher. And that was his ex-trainer. And I'm like, really? What?
He's doing something right.
Absolutely. So, all right. So, Dillian Whyte. The other thing is the change of trainer. What did the Americans think of his change of trainer? Because he had Mark Tibbs, who led him up to the heights of world boxing, and got him to the mandatory spot, and then he brings him a new trainer. What were the Americans' thoughts on that? And did they think that was the reason why Dillian lost?
I don't think so. Again, I'm not sure how much, other than the absolute fanatic, degenerate boxing observers here like myself think about it too much. Again, fighters change trainers. I think there's less of a question when a fighter changes a trainer sort of in the middle of a training cycle versus after the loss, when they're throwing them under the bus, when the change happens in a time period other than that, where it seems much more deliberate and well thought out. I think most of us give any fighter in that situation a pass.
Okay. The heavyweight division continues. Alexander Usyk fighting Derek Chisora. The fallout of that fight, according to Usyk according to Alexander Usyk, he said that he thought Chisora's gloves was not padded, or had some issues with Chisora's gloves. He didn't know about the ring until he actually did the ring walk, and he didn't feel he was supported. And then the performances that Usyk's had since he's come into the heavyweight division have been a bit questionable. And significantly, since his break with James Ali Bashir, Usyk seems to have regressed as a fighter, not progressed. Your thoughts on the whole Usyk phenomena?
Well, I will say with full disclosure, I love me some Alexander Usyk. I mean, who couldn't love this guy more? What this is the kind of personalities boxing needs. And he relishes the role. He just throws himself into it. I mean, he is a one-man entertainment machine. And, you know, quite a few years ago when he first came to the United States, we had a meet and greet with him in Los Angeles, and he absolutely spoke no English whatsoever. We didn't really know what we were going to see when he walked in. He was wearing a Hawaiian print shirt, Gucci sunglasses, and, you know, he's got that gap-toothed grin.
Yes.
And he had just bought himself his first sort of fancy car, and we asked him what it was. And, you know, I figured it would be some crazy thing, a Ferrari or, you know, some fast machine, Lambo. No, he bought himself a Bentley. It just cracked me up for some reason. Usyk, you know, was absolutely a master at the cruiserweight division level. But, you know, he is coming up a division where there's no ceiling. You know, the heavyweight division's weight ranges are just, and size ranges today, you know, are just unprecedented. And that's going to be a rough go for him. No, I do not think there should be a bridgerweight division.
You talk about that, actually. Bridgerweight.
Ridiculous, stupid, forget it. Who wants to be the bridgerweight champion of the world when they could be the heavyweight division champion of the world? No. It is the loser's bracket of the heavyweight division. Enough said. Let's move on.
Walking around champion. Who's going to want to be Bridgerweight champion?
Only people who can't compete at heavyweight. And I don't mean they can't compete because they're small. They can't compete because they aren't skilled. And Usyk is skilled, but he has to rely on different tools as a heavyweight than he did as a cruiserweight, because he is among the smaller guys. He has to fight in a much more nimble boxing manner. He needs to make these fights more about technical skill than he used to. And he'll do fine if he does that. But that's a big adjustment from the way you fought your entire career successfully up to this point. You know, a lot of fighters are able to change gears when they realize something they've been doing isn't working, because they lose. You know, they've got a problem. Well, Usyk has not lost. Usyk's been entirely successful all this way, but now he's still got to make changes to adjust to the heavyweight division. And I think it'll be tough for him when we've got guys at the top like Joshua, like Fury, like Wilder, who are massive-sized human beings. He'll be perfectly competitive with the likes of a Joseph Parker, a Michael Hunter, you know, some of these smaller guys. And I think also, you know, Usyk very much admires and patterns himself after Evander Holyfield. And I think he sees himself as having the same sort of adjustment period and eventually finding success like Holyfield did. And, you know, he had a lot of naysayers. Nobody thought in a million years he was going to be competitive at heavyweight and the way he was. I think Usyk down deep thinks he did it. I'm going to do it.
How much of an effect, if any, has there been since James Bashir has left or has been sacked by Usyk? And is it a justified move for Usyk now in the heavyweight division?
You know, again, these guys, they think, well, I have to change something. Oh, you're gone. You know, that's the easiest thing for them to do is change a trainer versus changing themselves. You know, it takes a while, though, to, to really become a good team with a new trainer, to really absorb, a new system, a new way of approaching things. You really have to give everybody 2, 3, 4 fights for you to see, everything coming together. So I think the jury's still out.
Usyk has not looked since the Gołacki fight, and then after, I think, yeah.
And it looks like we have lost our host. So if we are still live, I believe what I was going to be asked there was about how he's looked in how Usyk has looked in his fights since his fight with Gołacki and so forth. Well, again, he's moved up a division, and he was right in the sweet spot, size-wise, performance-wise, speed-wise, power-wise in the cruiserweight division. There was nobody there that could touch him. Again, moving up to a division where there's absolutely no ceiling on size, height, or weight, it's just a reality of physics that he's going to have a very hard time to overcome with the current status of the heavyweight champions in the division. I think he still has many good fights, but I think he's going to have serious trouble when he gets in the ring with either Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua. I think if he can avoid the power punch, that right hand of Deontay Wilder, he has a good shot at possibly winning a fight with Wilder. But against the two top guys, I think he may have reached the limits of what he can do. He'd have to fight an extremely smart technical fight. It's in the realm of possibility, but I'm not sure he'd be able to pull that off. That'd take a lot. I wouldn't mind seeing Usyk train exclusively with Papa Lomachenko to see what might happen. And you have returned. I've been carrying the water for you, sir, until you return.
My apologies to everybody. I don't know what happened.
So we went on to talk about Usyk and answer your question. So. And I think we are being bedeviled by the same technical problems. So patience, everybody. Hang in there. We don't want to end this conversation on technological gremlins. And we'll see if Ingram returns. And we are back. We are back. So we've talked about some of our year-end awards. I believe both agreed that Fighter of the Year is certainly Teofimo Lopez for his amazing performance against Vasily Lomachenko, which proves to be the man. You got to beat the man. We had some great performances this year by other fighters, but arguably not against that caliber of opponent, and especially that early in your career. Just amazing. Knockout of the year, a lot of people have picked the uppercut knockout by Gervonta Davis over Leo Santa Cruz. It was an excellent knockout, no question. The other one that really flew under the radar that was a a leader from back in the pre-COVID time was Eliader Alvarez and Michael Seals. Oh, that was a wicked good knockout. But we will go with the aforementioned Alexander Povetkin knockout of Dillian White. Brutal, just brutal. And there was no question. You know the referee is not going to need to administer a count when you see a knockout like that. Just a truly great thing. Prospect of the year. There we go. We're back. We're back. Hey, technology is a wonderful thing, and it works a lot of the time, except when it doesn't.
Annoying. Thank you, Storm Bella. Let's continue. So where were we? We were talking the heavyweight division. Where were you, by the way?
We were. Well, I talked a little about Usyk and his potential moving forward, and that, there's a bigger gulf in the jump between cruiserweight and heavyweight. Really think about it than almost any other division jump, because heavyweight goes on to infinity, and Usyk's just, it's not his fault that he's not 6'7" and 230 pounds, and he never is going to be. So he's going to have to deal with that and work around.
But he had tremendous skill set, which has regressed since he's gone. Since Igor Klimas thought it was a smart idea for him to get rid of Bashir. The thing is, that footwork is what makes Usyk so good. To get yourself into position, to throw shots, and to get in and get out and be elusive. Now Usyk's standing his ground more and fighting with his face more, which is not what Usyk used to do. And in the heavyweight division, that's a death sentence. You can't stand in front of guys like Joshua and Wilder or even Fury, stand in front of those guys and, because you saw he said, he admitted in the first or second round, he was out on his feet against Derek Chisora.
Here's what I think's going on. It's my belief Usyk thinks the only way you get to be a star in the heavyweight division is by being a knockout power puncher. He needs to go back and watch every fight by the Klitschko brothers and think more about what made them successful and learn those lessons now if he hadn't already. He can't be lights out heavyweight power punching star. It's just not who he is. So if he's got that idea in his head, he needs to get rid of it fast.
He's talking about Joe Joyce Joe Joyce had his win against Daniel Dubois.
Usyk. I love that. Derek. Good for Joyce. I thought that was a genius move at the end of that fight for him to call Usyk out using his own, little call out that he was using for Chisora. Very, very funny. Good for Joe.
What do you think, Joe versus Usyk?
I like that fight. I do like it. It's a good style matchup. And I think Usyk could have a lot of trouble with Joyce. I couldn't have been more impressed the way Joyce handled himself in that fight. He silenced a lot of critics. But he's an Olympian who's got good boxing ability. And the things people criticize Joe, I've called Joe Joyce the British George Foreman. And people are like, what are you talking about? He's the British George Foreman. He walks you down, gets you the ropes, and clubs you. Got a great jab, good right hand, takes a great shot, and just keeps coming and keeps coming. And he's going to be a nightmare for any heavyweight. How many times do we have to keep reminding people that the jab can be a weapon? The jab is such an important punch and can be an important punch standing on its own. Absolutely. Why is it simply tossed away, as that punch that starts the meaningful punch sequence? No, it needs to be applied on its own, just the way Joyce did.
Give me a jab, it'll take you around the world. Give me a right hand, it'll take you around the corner.
That's
which leads me to another point. There's not enough boxing teachers today. We've got a lot of boxing coaches and rent a coach, but we haven't got many teachers who actually understand boxing science. And that's the problem we have.
Well, everything's on a bell curve, isn't it? Everything, every skill set in the world, whether you're an engineer or a boxing coach, the vast majority are in the middle, and they're serviceable, they're fine. You've got the bottom 10% that have absolutely no business being anywhere in the sport. And then you have the top 10, or well, we'll be generous, 10 or 15%, the Derek Jameses of the world. And, if you're lucky enough to get to work with one of them, great. Some athletes are just so good, the trainer is not the make or break, but a great trainer can make a good fighter a great fighter. And that's the big thing.
Absolutely. In terms of trainers and fighters, a dynamic I noticed with Anthony Joshua has now come forward and throw bombs, but be able to get on the back foot and move from side to side against Kubrat Pulev was very impressive. We saw two sides of Anthony Joshua. We saw the guy up there and try and blast you out of there, but we also saw him be able to step off the back foot, on the back foot, and move from side to side and give movement. He's become a more diverse fighter now, I would say, than the general stand-up looking like Bruno, stiff jab and big right hand. He looks more advanced. And one of the moves I saw, which was two of the moves, where he stepped back and he hit Pulev. And that's Kubrat Pulev, who's the master jabber. Step back and crack him with the right hand. That was beautiful. But what was more impressive was the uppercuts, where he's able to slip to the side.
Those uppercuts this year. I love this.
There we go. Pulev and the uppercut. I mean, with Joshua, that was a very good performance. I actually didn't think that Joshua would beat Pulev. I actually thought that Pulev would back him up with a double jab, because you just come forward, boom, 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 straight lines, get him with a jab, backed up, straight right hand for the middle. Joshua showed movement. Anthony Joshua showed movement. But he's still being criticised for being gun shy, and he's not quite the fighter he was before. I think he's developing, but
I think those critiques are ridiculous.
Yeah, go on, Gayle.
Man adding to his skill set. This isn't a man caught between styles. This is a man adding new tools to the toolkit. Isn't that what you're supposed to do when you're an elite athlete? Is once you've mastered the skills that have gotten you that far, then add the skills you need as you progress in your career.
Absolutely.
Because now he can choose from an array of tools. He's got a much wider arsenal to pick from.
Absolutely.
Not every heavyweight fight has to be toe-to-toe blasting away. Again, let us go back to the Klitschko brothers. Do they make for the most crazed, exciting fights? No, that's not what boxing is necessarily about. It is about craft, skill, psychology, and knowing when to use certain tools and when not. When you need a hammer, use the hammer. When you need the pliers, when you need the, needle nose screwdriver, then you pull those out. You don't use a hammer when you need to screw in a bolt to the wall. I mean, come on.
It's not about the tool, it's how you use the tool.
Of course. And this is the maturing of a fighter. I think it's a great thing to see. It's very exciting.
Absolutely. And, one of the criticisms that were put towards Joshua, and that's really because of his rival Tyson Fury, we'll get on to him in a moment, called him a pumped-up weightlifter. So when Joshua started his career, he may have looked like a pumped-up weightlifter and very much like Bruno. But I never saw Bruno off the back foot dancing and moving from side to side ever in his career. So I think people need to kind of reopen their eyes to Joshua, because the gap between Joshua and Fury is closing, because Joshua's adding more tools to his repertoire than the pumped-up weightlifter that was coming forward, And the loss to Andy Ruiz might have been a blessing in disguise for the longevity of Anthony Joshua's career.
Yeah. Losses can absolutely be the best thing to happen, a blessing in anyone's career. Go back to the beginning of this discussion and how much Canelo benefited from that early career loss to Mayweather. I'm convinced the reason he is such a good fighter today was that experience and learning from it. There's a very famous quote by Nelson Mandela that He never loses. He never loses. He either wins or he learns. You either win or you learn when you're an elite athlete at this level. And when you have a loss like that, it's not a waste. It's not detrimental to your career as long as learning occurs. And clearly, Joshua learned, Canelo learned. That's where they are, why they are where they are today.
So the future, Joshua versus Usyk?
I think that's a competitive fight, but I think Joshua handles Usyk fairly easily. And I think it's a very technical fight. And with the threat of Joshua's power punching. With that behind it, I think that's a daunting challenge for Usyk.
Yes, but I think that might be the way forward, which leads us into our next situation. Do you want to show us what you've got?
It was just Christmas time, everybody. It was.
I can't see it.
I got the bottom. Oh, no, I got the bottom. I'm like, oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, my God. Oh, my gosh. The Gypsy King. There we go.
Yeah, let's talk about the Gypsy King.
Oh, you know how envious you all are.
Let's hope that Coach Chris is nowhere in sight.
What an intriguing fight. Hearing Joshua. Yes, what an intriguing fight. A lot of people talk about Spence and Crawford being the biggest fight that can be made. Mm-hmm. I think that's the second biggest fight.
Let's wheel some things back a bit. Okay. So we have that second fight of Mr. Wilder. Mr. Wilder gets beat. Then the stories start to come out of, all the stories that come out. Then there was the third fight. We all knew there was 3 fights. There was a 3-fight deal. We all knew about it. Then we hear that the contract has expired. Now, when I was talking to a lot of experienced fighters, they're saying to me, what do you mean a damn contract expiring? How could a contract expire like that? Such a big fight expired like that? Really? So then people said to me, nah, he's not going to fight at the end of the year. If this contract is in place, there's no way Furie's going to fight at the end of the year. Get him, Furie's going to fight at the end of the year. He wants to fight. He's going to fight this person. He's going to fight that person. Then we hear Tyson Fury's not fighting at the end of the year. While all that's all going on, we start hearing things about Glovegate, the gloves, the this and that about the glove. And you can see the glove and you can see the knuckles, and it's evident. We can see that. Then Wilder does that video that comes out. He does. And then there's the he's gone to court, the judge in arbitration or something like that is going through now. And there's murmurs now, and lots of murmurs that Fury's back in training camp preparing to fight Deontay Wilder for a third fight. If this is the case, and somebody said to me, this fight here he was going to have at the end of the year, not going to happen. It's all smoke and mirrors. They will fight. Wilder and Fury will fight in spring 2021. They're just waiting till all the fans come back, and you'll see Wilder Fury 3 2021, not Joshua versus Fury. What's going on? Gayle, over to you.
So I'm going to say straight up, I don't speculate on rumors. I don't know what's going on. I'm not inside those camps.
Right.
However, let's go back through some of the discussion and accusations.
Yes.
Let's talk about the gloves first of all.
Oh, before we go on to those gloves, we had a fight not too long ago with those same gloves by the WBC that were commissioned. That we also find out the guy, when they opened the gloves up, he was not padded, and that those gloves got changed. Remember the fight quite recently? I can't remember the 2 fighters, low weight division, and there's investigation going on about it now. The same puffing gloves. Yeah, but anyway.
But and I don't know much about that. However, it was caught. It is very, very difficult to glove up a fighter in the way that Wilder alleges, with so many eyes on these gloves, especially when you're dealing with very skilled, experienced commissions, California, Nevada. Is it going to happen in Central America, some places in Mexico, in various places in the United States where they do not have high-level prize fighting, maybe. It is virtually impossible with as many eyes on those gloves for what Wilder claims to have happening. I mean, it's just physically almost impossible. And he's gone on to get wound up tighter and crazier with the accusations. There are a lot of people very worried about Wilder. This has been a running theme through our discussion about fighters having to rationalize that first big loss, sometimes the first loss entirely in their career. And some handle it by firing a trainer, Mark Breland, who got a raw deal. The only man in that whole arena who cared about what was happening to Deontay Wilder got punished for it. So be it. That happens with a lot of fighters. Or they blame some other aspect of their performance. They were sick. They didn't have the right training camp. This and that. Wilder has taken the excuses to a whole nother level. I mean, we all laughed about the whole your ring costume weighs 40 pounds and it tired you out. I mean, that was just good.
But I don't think he said that. I think that was something that was put out there, but he never said that himself.
Well, he certainly didn't disavow it. This has just gotten to be, so beyond belief. With all of these accusations piling up, you start looking at who the common denominator is. I think we've got a lot to be worried about there with Wilder's mindset. His family or people close to him, I hope, have sat him down and had some serious discussions. For that reason alone, it concerns me seeing him going to a third fight like this, if that's truly his mindset. But I'm not sure I want to see a third fight. I really don't think I need to see a third fight with the other possibilities out there. I'd rather see something fresh, frankly.
But if it's contractual, if it's in his contract for Fury and he's obligated.
So that's another point.
And the lawsuit. They said that
So let's talk about the legal aspects of this.
Let's talk about it.
Which is something I know a little about, enough to be dangerous.
I'm concerned.
PBC is run by who?
Al Heyman,
an extremely skilled attorney. Top Rank is run by who? Bob Arum, an extremely skilled attorney. At the highest levels, by the way, before he got into boxing. He worked for the John F. Kennedy administration before he ended up in boxing. Most people don't know that history.
Wow.
Those guys do not leave an I undotted, I promise you, between them. And if they were smart enough to write an expiration clause in there because they didn't want this thing to stew and stew and stew and stew, I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. That's perfectly proper in contracts. Some people know that I run a public relations firm. I have expirations in my contracts all the time. Normal. They're called sunset clauses. If such and such doesn't happen by X date, contract's over. This does not surprise me. Just because we haven't seen it come into play very often or recently or be talked about publicly doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Sure, contracts expire. They aren't open-ended forever.
Yes, but he should have fought in December. Fury was meant to fight in December. He didn't.
So here's the issue. The pandemic gets a say this year. We just aren't factoring in a lot of these issues. And financially, the reality is there's just no way around some of these issues having to do with the lack of the live gate. And it's not just the gate itself. It's the revenue all of the fans coming into town bring. All the money they spend on lodging, on buying their swag, right? The drinks they're buying, the other sightseeing, these are revenue generators beyond just, a $250 ticket up in the rafters, right? So then you talk about, all right, well, there's pay-per-view. Well, pay-per-view can't even begin to make up a fraction of a $17 million gate. And we all know the financial situation for a lot of people in the world right now, especially in the countries we're talking about, in the US and the UK. That's a big ask. Look at the pay-per-view numbers we've seen this year. They haven't been too good, folks. The only one that beat expectations was Tyson versus Jones Jr. Go figure, right? I mean, so
hold on.
The financial model has a problem right now.
Tyson versus Jones Jr. had no big name promoters in it. None.
No, that didn't.
And no good TV deal either. Did it?
No, right. It didn't. Well,
what does that tell you?
It finally did sign on what I would think of as legacy type cable operations in the United States when they realized that, the fans that watched Tyson and Jones in their heyday were going to have a hard time figuring out how to find an app and upload it and use it. Why that's beyond anybody's skill set in 2020, that's another discussion. But I don't give a damn how old you are. That's ridiculous. But nevertheless, it did get very good distribution. They were very smart to bring on a lot of the Showtime boxing analysts that people know and love. And whoever hired Snoop Dogg was an absolute friggin' genius. The music acts, whether they were to your liking or not, were well staged and very entertaining. Did you walk away thinking you got $50 worth of entertainment? You did.
You did.
Yeah. So it made money. That made money for them, given the overhead. The financial model for a fight of the nature of Fury and Wilder 3 or Joshua and Fury is rough right now. And now that we can all see, we hope, the light at the end of the tunnel and maybe returning to some bit of normalcy by summer or fall, they gotta hold on till then. They've just got to hold on and hold out.
So if Wilder versus Fury 3 happens, is Deontay Wilder a liar if this fight happens? Because they said that the contract expired. And now they're backtracking. So if the contract has expired, how has Wilder got himself back in to be able to fight Fury?
There's something called writing up a new contract. That's pretty easy. Write up a new deal.
Yeah, but why would you do that when you could fight Joshua?
Why would Fury do it when he could fight Joshua?
Yes. Unless there's a lawsuit there that, as people are saying, there's a lawsuit there. If Fury decides to go and fight Joshua, it will be the biggest lawsuit in boxing history.
You can file any allegations you want in court and a judge can laugh you out. So good luck with that.
Can laugh you out.
Yeah. Well, and you can make accusations of any nature whatsoever in a lawsuit in the United States anyway. You can accuse somebody of anything outrageous you want. It doesn't mean it's true, and it doesn't mean it's proven. It's an accusation. So I wouldn't get too wound up in this. Let's look at Wilder's mindset that he's been demonstrating, unfortunately, to the world via his social media. It's not too stable right now. And there are lawyers who, with enough money, will file anything you ask them to. They figure, that's my job. That's what the client wants to pay me for. Fine. If that's providing Wilder psychological cover, he's going to do it.
Okay, you call it psychological cover. Now, if Wilder ends up getting his third fight when it should have been, as Fury said, knocked on the head, and he gets his third fight, when he said, "Look, I've got all this evidence. I'm taking it, and I'm this is this and this and this." And if it was something to be laughed about, then you go, hey, you're joking. Let's go on and fight Joshua. Let's make that Joshua fight happen. Why is it now seen that there's going to be a third fight of Wilder? If it's that,
It's a rumor. It's a rumor. Let's not all get too wound up about rumors. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We don't have any idea whether this is going to happen or not. And again, we're in a pandemic environment. There is really, frankly, no huge hurry We've got 6 months to play with before one of these bigger fights happen. If Fury decides he's going to take some kind of interim fight in the meantime, some easy mandatory, some fight to keep himself in front of the public, not a bad idea.
Anything in the contract that says that Fury cannot fight anybody else but Deontay Wilder, if that is in the clause that he cannot fight anybody else without
if the contract expired, it doesn't matter.
But if the contract expired, Fury should have fought in December.
Not necessarily, because of the pandemic. If you can't get a gate in and you can't make the numbers work, you got to wait.
But the fight was there. It was there.
There's nothing sinister with that. And here's, to me, the bigger issue is, if everybody gets itchy, gets a twitchy trigger finger and says, we've got to have this fight, my concern is it's going to the Middle East. What a shame that would be for the British fans. That fight needs to happen in the UK. Fury and Joshua. I would hate to see it go to the Middle East. Financially, that may need to happen if the fight's going to happen sooner rather than later.
Does it happen? Does it happen?
Does the fight happen? Does the fight happen? Of course. I think your question is, does the fight happen next? Does the fight happen next? And does the fight happen next year? The pandemic gets a say.
I don't know. I'm gonna, if I'm a betting man, I'm gonna go with Joshua fighting Usyk and Fury fighting Wilder 3 in the spring of 2021.
Well, we're gonna find out as the clock ticks, aren't we?
Absolutely. Maybe that's in the heavyweight division we need to talk about that comes to mind. We've talked about Povetkin, we've talked about Usyk, we've talked about Michael Hunter. Michael Hunter gets released of his contract from Matchroom, free agent. He's a dangerous man. What happens with him?
Michael Hunter, unfortunately, he's released from his contract, but doesn't have much of a team, much of a push behind him. He's going to need some help. But he makes an interesting option. And if he's smart, he talks to all of them and says, listen, I know I'm not your priority. I know you've got bigger fish to fry out there. But again, he's one of those fighters who can take advantage of the pandemic situation, as several others have, and say, listen, I'm willing to take a tiny bit less of a purse. Get me out there. Give me this chance. He'd be smart to bet on himself in that way and make an early fight against a name struggling to find an opponent. Make it a bit of a loss leader for himself. Bet on himself that he wins and the bigger payday is down the road. Be a very smart thing for him to do and very feasible.
Joseph Parker. I think he has the talent to be the best heavyweight in the world. I just think that his trainer has taken him as far as he can.
I'm not 100% convinced of Parker's skill set. Andy Ruiz gave him a big test. I for one, thought
Ruiz beat him. I did too.
Parker. And very much like Usyk, who doesn't love Joseph Parker? I mean, the man needs to have a film career after this is over. I mean, there's just no question about it. He is an entertainer. If you have not watched Joseph Parker's pandemic, movie parodies, you have lost out. Go seek out Joe Boxer Parker's on Twitter immediately.
Top fighter. I just think. I'm
not sure his skill set is there.
Let me throw this at you. Let me give you Joseph Parker working with Ronnie Shields, or Joseph Parker working with Tommy Brooks, or Joseph Parker working with Stacey McKinley, or Joseph Parker working with James Ali Bashir. There's 4 trainers there.
All of them good.
Right? So, wait. Good chin, good speed, good punching power, decent footwork. You know what I mean? Good heart. He's got everything there. But I just think that he's hit his, no disrespect to his trainer, I just think he's hit a ceiling with his trainer and he's not progressing. You're not seeing anything new in Joseph Parker. Well, you think those other experienced trainers, it'd be nice to see one of them take Joseph Parker and just given, even Joseph Parker was working with someone like Derek James, for example. Can you imagine Joseph Parker worked with Derek James and what nuances he could bring to Joseph Parker?
Perhaps, Parker needs to want to do this and want to change. Does he?
He's got his manager as well. His trainer is his manager as well. So,
I applaud loyalty. Loyalty, unfortunately, isn't always pay off in boxing. And it might be that Joseph Parker has just simply not got whatever that intangible ingredient is that puts all those skills together in, just the right brew that makes it happen. I mean, that happens. We see fighters with all the talent in the world, seemingly, and they just can't push past whatever that barrier is to the top step.
Daniel Dubois, what are Americans thinking about him now? Obviously, because of what happened in his life.
Dubois was really breaking through with the American fans, who, if they know nothing else about boxing, they know the heavyweight division, they love their heavyweight big punchers, and he was starting to be buzzed about. And so for many of them, getting to see him against Joyce, was a first for a lot of fans. And oh boy, what a disappointment, unfortunately. I think he can come back from it, like some of the other gentlemen we've talked about. If he can learn from the loss, this could be a benefit to him. But boy, in the short term, what a disaster that was for him. He looked horrible. And Joyce, smart. Right. Joyce had his number. Good for him.
Absolutely. So just to close now, fight of the year.
Teofimo Lopez.
Comeback of the year.
I do think Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez is it. I will give Errol Spence a very close second on that one. But I think Chocolatito.
Upset of the year.
It might have been Joyce. It might have been Joyce over Dubois, given the stakes involved. That's as good as any. The fight, I would say, Carlos Gondora could make an argument for himself.
Okay. Okay. Let me think else. Breakthrough talent of the year.
Well, we could all laugh and say Clay Collard, and there's great affection for what he was able to do, and good for him. We don't know whether he's a flash in the pan or not, but Edgar Berlanga has made a lot.
Oh, my boy, Edgar.
I for one think Edgar's the real deal. I do. I think he needs not to get ahead of himself. That's what I'm a little concerned about. And he needs to go some rounds this year. But I do think he's the real deal. He's got the personality. He's got the machine behind him. All the right ingredients are there. Brooklyn did really well in boxing this year. We got Berlanga. We got Lopez.
You got Danny.
Yep. Hey. And Mike Tyson didn't have a bad year either. So there we go. But I would say Edgar Berlanga. Yeah. Absolutely.
Berlanga for me, the only thing about Berlanga, and I love my brother so much, but it's all right giving it out. We all know in boxing, when people start throwing punches back.
Yeah.
Whether
that's why he needs to get in there with some guys who have granite chins who can grind on him and see how he does.
Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. I think that's.
Oh my Lord. Although I will say the best $10 I spent all year, figuratively, because a group of us did this, was buying Chavez Jr.'s pay-per-view fight about 2 or 3 weekends ago. It was absolutely a riot. I mean, bang for the boxing buck. That was right up there.
Oh, I have to mention females boxing. We've got to really talk about it because it's been big. Jessica McCaskill.
Yeah. There might, you know what? That might be your upset of the year. Jessica McCaskill over Celia Brækhus. I could argue that as being the upset of the year. Easily.
I predicted McCaskill with that worker.
Yeah. she's learned, and she's a fighter who's taken a few losses along the way and learned from them and had an unshaking belief in herself.
The Katie Taylor fight, which I thought she did better in than people gave her credit for, I said, this girl's going to go on to be champion. There's no doubt in my mind. And Rick, what's his name? I forgot Rick's last name. But Rick down at boxing, body boxing. Is body boxing? Body blow boxing. He needs to be given credit for training McCaskill. That's a guy that needs to be given some serious credit to take her, not only just after she's got beat, move her up in weight to fight the best girl in the division at the time, and then go on and fight, and move up again and go and fight breakers.
Yep, we had some tremendous women's fights this year.
Yes.
The Taylor Persoon rematch was crazy to watch. The Harper Jonas fight was tremendous. Tasha Jonas got robbed, in my opinion, but we hopefully will see that again. Clarissa Shields, unfortunately wasn't very active. That was a shame. But we are seeing more women's bouts. We're going to see the return of super middleweight champion Franchon Cruz-Dezurn on the Ryan Garcia Campbell undercard. I'm looking forward to that. And a lot more promoters are putting more women's bouts up. Michaela Mayer certainly took advantage of being in the bubble and got herself a few visible fights, which was very smart for her. There's a lot of talent out there, but come on, the women are very concerned about pay equity. They are going to have a losing argument until they fight 3-minute rounds. And it's got to happen. Maybe this is the year. And it's completely up to the commissions involved. In Nevada and New Jersey in the United States, women can fight and do fight 3-minute rounds frequently.
So that's something that needs to be considered. In Kalia, the Pink Tyson, she's going to be fighting. She's moving up, not one, not 2 divisions, 3 weights up. It's a big ask, quite literally.
It really is, yes.
I mean, I spoke to her before she left, and she had ambitions, as any fighter does, to go and fight for the world title. And she's mentally a very strong individual, but 3 weight divisions. I mean, your management couldn't get you a fight in your own weight division or a weight division above. 3 weight divisions. Who jumps 3 weight divisions and becomes champion? I mean, that's
right. That's a lot to adjust to. Think about whatever size you are as a human being and picking up, 10 or 15% of your body weight in dumbbells and just walk around with it. Just walk around and see how that feels. Now think about packing it on yourself and being able to move as quickly and without fatigue. That's a tough thing to do. But the women's divisions have so, especially as you move up higher in both in skill set and size, there's so few opponents. There's so, there isn't the depth of talent in a lot. That's the problem.
What do you think of her chances?
I can't, going up that far.
It doesn't.
It's a tough call because it just makes it almost impossible for me to see her winning. But I hope I hope I'm proven wrong, because I hope this was a very serious, lengthy discussion in her camp. I don't know if she walks around at a higher weight in between fights. Some fighters do, and if she's always been comfortable, at a higher weight in between and hasn't had trouble in the past, if it's an issue of she's cut quite a bit of weight in between in between fights coming back, if she's always been able to do that, and now it's a matter of, I was up at that weight or close to it walking around in between fights, maybe that's a different story. And there's so many other cultural and physical and psychological issues with women and their weight up and down, and that does play a role. I mean, it just does in our society. So I applaud her. I applaud her for that ambition. I have a hard time seeing it pay off. That's a big risk.
Speed might be her advantage here. Speed and movement. She might see the punches coming, so she might be able to move out of the way and kind of do some sort of amateur pitter-patter, try and win the rounds by just
right. Very well said. Adjusting your approach from the way you normally fight in the ring, to make it a bit more of a defensive fight for yourself.
Yeah,
certainly a possibility.
Hit and run.
Yeah.
Could work. Any final thoughts before we end here, Gayle?
It's been a rough year for everybody. There are people who've lost friends and family to this insidious stuff. We criticize from ringside. We call it as we see it. But let me say bravo and thank you to every single promoter, athlete who decided to, suck it up, do what needed to be done, get through it, put cards together. We got a lot more and better cards this year after the March shutdown than I ever expected to see. We didn't know what was going to happen. This is uncharted territory. Not many of us were around in 1918, the last time this happened. So I just say thank you, for giving us a lot to talk about. The last fight I covered in person was Wilder Fury 2. That's the very last fight I was at. When will I be at another? Maybe this summer, maybe here in Southern California or Las Vegas. When we all get back together, it's going to be one hell of a reunion, and I look forward to it.
Gayle, as always, thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you and know more about what you do?
So my regular column is published in Communities Digital News, which is actually a general news website out of Washington, D.C., but I'm based in Southern California. So that's COM, C-O-M-M, Digi, D-I-G-I News, comdiginews.com. I am on the Twitter and the Instagram as PR Pro San Diego. And you see my name down here? Look at that name. Come on, Google me. There's only one of me. I'm easy to find.
And finally, how's the old stuff going with TMZ? How's it going?
Harvey and Charles, let me tell you, that has been one of the strangest events of the whole pandemic. I've become a semi-regular as part of the viewers gallery for TMZ. I was on this past week. I'm on every few weeks. And go figure. It's a lark. It's fun. That's what you get for being snarky on Twitter. That's how they found me. And when the producers called me, I thought someone was trolling me. I thought, what? You got to be kidding. Nope. It was the real deal. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lark and something fun for me to do while I'm in my Southern California bunker like everybody else is.
Keep going, keep shining, and I look forward to seeing more of you in 2021.
Thank you, Ingram, and we will get together and have that reunion on one side of the pond or the other. We've got a lot of great fights coming up.
Sounds good.
In 2021.
All the best. Gayle, thank you so much. Oh, hold on. We have Uncle Bashir. I think we've got Uncle Bashir on the line.
We do?
Uncle Bashir, you on the line? Yeah, he's on the air. He's been watching.
Thank you so much. It's a good thing we said nice things about you.
Yes. Yeah, once again, thank you so much.
Take care, everybody.
Take care. Take care, everybody. See you soon. Thanks for watching.